Hello, everybody out there in radio or internet land. Y'all are listening to Media Ciphers only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo or online at widerfm.org. You might also be catching us on our YouTube or podcast page. Today, we're joined by a couple of special guests. We are going to have a panel of housing organizers who are currently working with We the People Michigan, and they are trying to bring to light some appropriation of ARPA funds that might be going towards the Arcadia Festival Site. If you've been following the program last couple of weeks, you've probably heard me mention this slash talk about it. We also featured some content about it on our page. And of course, the main concern, these are ostensibly supposed to be COVID relief funds. And thanks to people who were paying very close attention to how the city was crossing its T's and dotting its I's, we are now there's a broader awareness of this particular plan. Um, so we're about to get into the details of that, but before we do, could y'all just briefly introduce yourselves? Just name, pronoun, uh, and well, yeah, I guess that's about it. But an interview.
Thank you so much, Andy, for letting us have this opportunity to share with Kalamazoo about this issue and about our plans with organizing around this issue. My name is Tristen, and like you mentioned, I'm an organizer with We the People, Michigan. And I was on your show last August when I was talking about the Rent is Too Damn High rally. And we've been organizing since then in Kalamazoo, primarily focusing on our ongoing fight to try to secure renters' rights in the city. But recently, this issue with regards to the ARPA funds was brought to me by one of my fellow organizers, a couple of my fellow organizers actually, but Kay, who is joining us here today, will be helping to elucidate some of the information as well. I use she, her pronouns as well, so thank you.
Hello, I go by Kay. In the community. My pronouns are she, her, and yeah, I'm the one that doesn't trust the city and what they say in those meetings. So yeah, I'm always double checking their work and making TikToks about it.
All right. Well, thank you both for coming on the show to talk about this really, really important topic. So maybe we could just kind of start with the basics. If you could just briefly explain to our listeners what those ARPA funds are, and also how you found out that they could potentially be used for this project at Arcadia Park, and maybe explain a little bit why there's a little bit of public pushback against that.
I can explain first of all what the ARPA funds are. They're federal dollars that were given to Kalamazoo, close to $40 million that was given to Kalamazoo to help with providing to people some relief um, for the impact of the pandemic. So the shutdown and like people lost their jobs, had difficulty paying bills, paying rent. Businesses were struggling like during and shortly after the pandemic. And so these funds were given to many cities throughout the country to assist with getting America, back on its feet after the pandemic. And so that is what the funds are supposed to be used toward. And the final budget for these funds needs to be determined by the end of this year, by the end of 2024. And so there is some urgency on the part of the commission now to determine what this money is going to be used for. And Kay, you were at the city commission meeting at the start of January where they first started talking about this. If you want to share a little bit about how you came across this.
Yeah, so I usually follow and like call into the city meetings, and usually when they have their presentations, when they're trying to appropriate funds, I usually go onto the website and like check. So I had tuned in and seen that they were about to adopt the 2024 budget. And so I went on the website, and sure enough, that was like one of the first things that popped into my like I saw. It's like Arcadia fencing in, demolition, like reconstruction of the site did not sit well as like an ARPA need.
Yeah, and then Kay brought this to my attention during one of our monthly team meetings, or when we met at some point. And looking through the budget, it is compared to some of the other areas of the budget, it is a pretty large sum of money, $1.65 million that they're planning on allocating to the Arcadia Festival site. I don't know if you want me to go into the details of that budget, or what the how this money functions in the context of that park budget, or what, but that's basically the general gist of things. So and we were like 1.65 million to renovate and quote unquote secure Arcadia Festival Site in the midst of what we consider to still be the ongoing effects of the pandemic, but also the housing crisis, and the other crises that are impacting working class and impoverished people in our city. So
Well, thank you. And so I'm actually that what you were just bringing up that uh, segues really well into our next question, which is kind of talking about or asking about what the city's specific plans are with the site, and above and beyond, again, the money being used for this, maybe any potential criticisms you have about the plan, particularly as it relates to this COVID relief money being used for it.
yeah, so if you not a lot of folks were there. So if you go to the Kalamazoo City Commission's Facebook page or YouTube page, you can see the recorded sessions that they've had. And I encourage folks to look back at the session from, was it February 5th, the most recent City Commission meeting at 5 p.m., where they brought in two speakers to talk about this particular, well, one was just to talk about the visitor spending in the city. Jane Ghosh, who's the CEO of Discover Kalamazoo, talked a bit about the visitor spending since the pandemic. And then the assistant city manager, Rebecca Kick, shared with shared with the commission the plan for what is actually phase one of what will be a multi-phasal project for renovating and redoing Arcadia Festival Site. Um, and I want to preface, first of all, that Arcadia Park is an older park, and there are aspects of the park that deserve attention. Like if it is true that the bridge is unsafe, then it is the city's responsibility to manage that. And it's not necessarily that we as a group, or that any of the people who we are working with and talking to in the community who are upset about this, it's not necessarily that folks don't want the park to be made better. There are simply parts of this plan and the budget process that make this an unjust situation. Um, and so with regards to the park itself, the actual budget is 5.1 million for phase one, and they've received I think around 3.5 million in funding from the state and funding from local and other foundations. And this 1.65 million then is only a small, not small, but a percentage of that budget. And it seems to myself and to a lot of the organizers who are talking to, that the city is almost treating these ARPA funds in its final year and its final decision making here as almost like a grab bag. They're like, it's 2024. These funds have to be allocated before the end of the year, so they have to be put somewhere. So then they come forward with this phase one Arcadia Park plan, and they're like, ooh, we're short on budgeting. We're short 1.65 million. Oh, well, why don't you just take it from the ARPA funds? And then they use the stipulation in the funding that the money can be used toward economic development and restoration of the economy as justification for having used the money in that way. I'd like to point out as well that one of the speakers during that meeting, as I mentioned, Jane Ghosh, she had expressed in the meeting, and I quote, "We have greatly recovered since the pandemic with regards to visitor spending and the spending downtown." And so the notion that $1.65 million is going to be necessary in order to improve the economic impact of the pandemic on the city seems like itself to be also untrue. There's also criticism with regards to the park plan because a portion of the park, and it appears to be around 20% of the existing public land, is going to be sold off to private housing developers. They want to put some new apartment buildings on Kalamazoo Avenue. So as you know, as you're driving down Kalamazoo Ave, if you're going west through town and you can see the park there on your left, that whole area they want to be large apartment buildings with another center behind it. And although they gave a little bit of lip service during the meeting and when some of the commissioners were asking questions with regards to quote unquote affordable housing, and they said that there were a couple bids for the spots that had folks who are interested in getting the tax breaks, the tax incentives for that type of housing. As we've seen with the city and the way that they have built quote unquote affordable housing in the past, it's been far from affordable for the people who actually live here. And so this feels like a situation of gentrification where they're using the need for housing development. Yes, Kalamazoo does need more housing to justify building housing that people who live here can't afford. And so they're building housing to bring new, more affluent people into the city and push out the people who are living in the city already. I'd like to pass it to Kay though to talk a little bit about the history of the Arcadia Festival Site and the way that the city has treated some of the houseless population and people in the area and how that is impacting that population as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to like a little bit of what you said about like the grab bag, right, of this money and how they're because that was one of the narratives around the money. It's like, oh, where are we going to allocate this money to now that it's 2024? But I want to say that it was all along, this was intentional because the history of the site in the last 2 years speaks for itself. And that is one thing that I like really adamant about driving with this is that this was intentional because in the past 2 years, we have seen an increase in push from Arcadia Festival Site, which includes policing and sweeping the site every 2 hours, posting signs in the site, um, directly like attacking the houseless community, saying if you leave things unattended, they're going to be thrown out. You cannot be here more than 2 hours, specifically targeting the unhoused community and preparing the site for what it is that they thought they were going to, that the ARPA money, because now that, when the assistant manager Kick was talking, she cited the Notre Dame study. There's a University of Notre Dame study done about downtown Kalamazoo, and they cited that, and the the study itself also mentions the houseless community as a important their need to be in Arcadia and how they use the site, and that the site should keep the houseless community in mind so that everybody feels welcome at the site. But that is no longer a viable option because they have already made that space so that the houseless community can no longer be there and feel safe there. And this was said by houseless community members who showed up to the meeting, and they didn't speak, but they spoke to some of us, and some of them did speak this. Yeah, like, when Jane was talking about like the economics of downtown, she did express that the houseless community was not good for business. In a few words, she said that. And so, like, if there's a push to improve this site without the really addressing the barriers and the gentrification and displacement, then it's going to accelerate because as the economics grows, because the site was improved, so will the economics around the area without considering the houseless community, right? Without considering what this is going to do to them, because there's nothing in place. The mission is not a safe place for the houseless community. And let's see. Yeah, so yeah, and they also cited the matching grants. You know, they're saying that this money, the ARPA money, is like a security for these match grants that they want to get these over $2 million. And I feel like that is that's like a slap in the face, right? Because if we can talk about securing money for gentrification and doing studies for this, then why couldn't we facilitate that process to study the effects of gentrification downtown and how we could reverse that and how we could secure money to start housing first initiatives, right? To like, give do some of the things that other cities, and like the ARPA stipulations are very clear when it comes to how that money is supposed to be used. And like there's so many like documents for this. There's like the final stipulations, there's like the final rules, compliance, the reporting, and all of those things come together. You can't miss the spirit of what this money was intended for. With all of these stipulations, with all of these rules, the spirit of the money was supposed to be to help the houseless community, to help the ALICE community, which stands for Asset Limited Income Constraint Employed Community.
I absolutely agree, Kay. And when you look at the rising houseless population over the last 4 years, it continues to get worse and worse, right? Where people don't just like aren't they don't want to be living on the streets, right? It's happening because of conditions that we're exposed to right now. And a lot of those conditions are the result of the pandemic, right? People lost their jobs, people couldn't afford to pay their bills, and they're still struggling to catch up. And although there has been some relief, like there's been some attempts to try to help people, it's not enough. And so to say, okay, well, even though the money we have thrown at these issues hasn't been enough, we're not going to put any more because we want to we already have plans to sell off a portion of this park for housing, right? So yes, so I hope that gives you a good like an outline of the issue and some of our criticisms. So
Oh yeah, absolutely. And especially thank you for kind of responding to some of these things that are not maybe explicit in the plan, but could be some very pointed side effects. And just to kind of put a fine point on some of the points that you made, Kay, I think it's important for our listeners to understand historically. Arcadia Creek Festival Site has really slowed down as a site of a lot of festivals during the summer, and that has been in part because of a lot of the luxury apartments that are nearby just to the west of the park, and also has led to some of the crackdown on the houseless population that likes to congregate there. And again, it is a public park for all members of the public. Um, and I think it's important to think through kind of the implications, particularly of putting those sorts of apartments on Kalamazoo Avenue, which even by a quote unquote affordable housing metric, that if you're just looking at median income, that still means between $14 to $2,000 a month, which is out of reach for many working class people in the area. So it is based on just the history of the site and what they're planning to use this money for. It is not too far-fetched to think that that could accelerate some of the trends of, again, the park being used less and less for big public events and being less and less accessible for both the working and houseless populations. Many times one and the same, by the way. But okay, so with that, I think you explained pretty thoroughly about your concerns about ARPA funds being used specifically for this project and some of the implications down the road the project could have, especially relates to housing. I was kind of curious, as housing organizers, you're both pretty, you're both pretty dialed into the community, and a lot of the activists and organizers on the ground who are working on housing. How do you think that ARPA money could be more appropriately appropriated or used, I should say?
Um, I want to start by saying that our group is not trying to assert that we have all the answers, right? And we have some ideas for how we think these funds should be allocated, but we believe first and foremost that it needs to be a decision that is talked about with the community so that people who have different ideas can share those, and so that there is a sense of collaboration between our commission, our city leaders, and the people that they are leading, so that we're really targeting the people who are impacted most by the pandemic and impacted by the current economic situation in Kalamazoo. Our primary focus, since our group is really focused heavily on trying to secure housing justice and housing rights for people, we're focusing a lot on those housing issues and providing relief to people, whether it be in the form of straight renters relief. So like providing people like people who fell behind on their rent during the pandemic, who are still struggling to keep up, who are looking down the barrel of homelessness themselves because they're going to be evicted or something like that, providing additional relief to families and people who are struggling in that situation, or whether it's providing money to people who need a deposit in first month's rent for a place to live, like some people who are couch surfing and don't have a place to go, like they may even be working but they can't save up enough money to get that deposit in first months, right? And those are just a couple ideas that I have, but Kay, if you'd like to share some of the ideas that we've been talking about in our group as well and with some of our fellow organizers.
Yeah, I think pretty much was you've touched on most of the points. Um, yeah, basically just also like a direct approaches for the houseless community. There's a lot of individual people who are not part of organizations who are directly helping with their own money, with their own resources. They're out there helping the community. And so I feel like that is a big conversation we should have, because actually the Public Housing Commission is having a conversation about how they could build like start a process where people could come and request funds. So I feel like that could be a big conversation to have about this money, so that there is more community input and more community, outreach as well.
Some of the ideas that we heard, you were in the meeting with me, Andy, with the local DSA. So with regards to the public restroom project, trying to get more public restrooms for people in the city, like houseless people in public to use. And Judy Lowry suggested her idea with regards to the mobile shelter. And there's even other ones. So like I said, these federal dollars have been provided to cities throughout the country. And there was one article that was shared with me by one of the organizers of a governor in Connecticut who has decided to use the ARPA funds to wipe clean the entire state's medical debt. They purchased all the people's medical debt at a like a fraction of the amount using the ARPA funds. And yeah, and considering the funds are supposed to provide relief for a medical emergency, right? It seems like it was a very creative and impactful way to use this money. And that's the type of creativity and the type of ingenuity that we want from our city commission as well. Throwing $1.65 million into a $5.1 million phase one of a park renovation and selling off some public land is not a creative or impactful use of these funds. And really, we have our ideas, but many other organizers in Kalamazoo who dedicate their lives to this as well have their own ideas, and we want like really just want to have this conversation to be a little more in depth. We don't want them to just be like, nope, this is how it's going to happen, yada yada. We want to have a discussion about it. So
Exactly.
All right. So, when this was originally brought up a couple weeks ago, we pointed out a couple of the commissioners, particularly after hearing some input about it, took it off the table. It is coming back for a vote on February 19th. I'm curious, what has been the response of the city administration to people's concerns over funds being used on the project? And kind of what is your sense of just how particular commissioners are maybe what their stance is on this issue?
hey, do you want to first talk about you and the folks who showed up to the commission meeting 2 meetings ago, when they first were talking about this, and they agreed to pull it off the budget at first?
Yeah, so that first meeting, commissioner meeting, there was a lot of community that called in and also showed up to like express their like disagreement with the money. And actually, the Commissioner Cooney, Commissioner Hoffman, were in agreement that the money should absolutely be used, could be used better for direct relief for the houseless community. Commissioner Decker had changed her mind at that meeting, stating that she had seen like the economic benefits of updating it, but also is now seeing that how that money could greatly impact the houseless community and the community. And so, like there was a talk about like the other issues besides like the like infrastructures, like there's more issues as to why the site is not being used, and that's not the biggest issue. So
So the big thing to take away from that meeting that they had, so folks showed up, folks called in, told them that they were upset about this. Kay, having done fantastic research on this, was able to explain to the commission about this money and that it is a misappropriation, some misuse of these funds. And like Kay said, several of the commissioners agreed. They said that this is an issue, and they wish that they had taken more time to consider it. And at that time, they expressed that they were going to take it off the budget until later. They said later in the year, later they would talk about it again. And so our group and the folks who showed up that day, we were like, oh, this is fantastic. This gives us an opportunity to get in there, have one-on-one conversations with our commissioners, talk to them about a little bit more about all the details about this project, what are the other phases, yada yada yada, and determine a better way that this money can be used, and perhaps even learn more about the park project as a whole, and see what can be changed about that as well. So we were thinking, coming into the city commission meeting a week ago, that they were somewhat on our side and listening to us and talking to us about this issue, but it seems that they were just waiting for a chance to pull the rug out from under us, because at that very meeting is where they had the presentations by Jane Ghosh and Rebecca Kick, and Anderson and Mayor Anderson and Ritzenhoff were like, okay, well, I'm seeing nods around the room, so we're going to add this on to the discussion for the 19th. They're like the discussion was so short, and they didn't bring anyone in from any of the community organizing, like like homeless advocacy organizations, anyone besides the assistant city manager and Discover Kalamazoo. And it's like, why didn't you get another perspective for these commissioners to get some information on this? And so like I said, it felt like they're ripping the rug out from nurse. And actually, I showed up to the 7 o'clock meeting, having not attended the 5 o'clock meeting, and I'm up there telling them, I'm like, oh, I just want to thank you so much for taking this off the budget and and for giving us an opportunity for the community to work with you. We're really excited to talk to you about how these funds can be better allocated. And the whole time they're just like daggers at me because I wasn't there for 5 o'clock to hear about the fact that they weren't going to be doing that anymore. It was a little
I was I didn't hear the 5 o'clock meeting either, but I stood up and I was like, you really should consider who is advising you, who's standing before you, giving you this information, and like they're all white and it's all just like one sided. So I was had no idea. I'm just like shitting or like,
Oh yeah,
talking on these people who bring this information because that's like the biggest thing about this whole like situation is the way they like manipulate and
they have a narrative,
disregard.
right? They have a narrative that they're using
Yeah.
in order to get what they want from this, and they're going off that like the idea that, well, there's this money and there's a lot of things that the city needs and we have to be thinking about the future of the city and all this stuff. But you look at the park and the budget for the park, and let's not even consider the issues with the park plan itself, because even though there are definite issues, and in fact there's some potential serious injustice being occurred by the current plan for the park. But even if you were to disregard that, the it's still uh, I don't know. It's still a misappropriation of funds, right? Like why can't they use the city budget, the funds that the city already has to make this park, right? And it was interesting because at the same meeting that they told us that they were going to put this back into the budget plan, they allocated $9 million to public safety. Now, a portion of that is for new body cams, and admittedly, like we want to be able to make sure that our cops aren't being unlawful in the line of duty, right? And so we do want to be able to have like good monitoring of their behavior and things like that. But it was also a portion of those funds was used for new tasers.
Yeah.
And like I wonder how many millions of dollars of those 9 million is put towards new tasers, and how much of that could have been put towards a new park, right? Or provided like if the park was the plan, right? If that's really the issue, like they really want to get funding for the park, but no, instead they're taking the funds not from the city budget, but from these like what they're treating as like free money, right? The ARPA funds, the grab bag that they're going to use to fund the park instead. So there's just so many layers of like misuse and there's so many issues with the plan as it is currently.
And I think like the biggest thing for me was really seeing which commissioners really were interested in like, really recognizing as well, like, okay, this is not okay. Like this needs to, we're like, especially Cooney, he was like, yeah, I'm not in support of this. But it was really shocking to hear like Prado say, well, this sucks that we can't use these funds to help the community. But hey, like we could end up with a houseless situation and an infrastructure situation. I'm like, at Arcadia, like we're already having infrastructure emergencies in the south part of town. And they're flooding and they're about to take the last green space they have in that area. So it's like none of what they were saying to try to excuse the money was valid because ultimately the community perspectives were not included in this. And so it's like any attempt to try to dissuade or to change the narrative, it's only gonna work on people who have the class aspect or the class advantage because the rest of everybody is realizing like rent is bad, rent is out of control, housing is out of control. And like one thing that Decker did, Commissioner Decker did say in the first meeting when they first took it off the budget was that, about the housing there, that she would expect that to be 50% housing voucher. And she didn't repeat that. She did not repeat that because you know what? There's a big pushback. There's a big pushback for voucher housing because that does secure affordable housing. There's nothing else in place in this city that actually secures affordable housing than the housing voucher, because the AMI for the city is really skewed. It includes Portage, it includes Richland, cities that do heighten that AMI, and it's not the reality for the city of Kalamazoo.
Oh, well, I think, that's a really thank you for breaking that down so brilliantly for all the folks at home. And I think it's really important, again, um, this was from Vigilance. This is from organizers like y'all, really paying close attention to what was going on at these city meetings. They're not the most fun things to watch, but particularly, that is how we find out about these sorts of things as they come up. So, um, how can Kalamazoo residents kind of plug in, organize, and engage if they agree that it is the wrong decision to use the ARPA funds for this project? Um, kind of asking that both just like how can they get in touch with y'all, but also just more generally, how do you think people in the town in Kalamazoo can effectively organize against an allocation of public funds that is going to something that the public disagrees with?
So there's kind of like there's a lot of ways that we can try to get our message across and try to influence the local electeds, right? Obviously, I encourage anyone who has the time and the commitment to get involved with some type of organizing, whether it's like with us, with We the People, and trying to secure housing justice and housing for all and rent control in Kalamazoo and the state of Michigan, or whether it's working with any of the other fantastic local advocacy organizations and groups that are working in Kalamazoo, many of whom our group and members of our group have spoken with and met with in the last week about this issue alone. If you'd like to get involved with us, you can look us up on Facebook. You can contact me directly. I will give my information to you, Andy, so you can share it when you post this. So. If you'd like to get involved about this issue in particular, we are strongly encouraging everyone in the city of Kalamazoo. If you are a renter, if you are houseless, if you are a homeowner who is sympathetic to people who are impacted by the housing crisis, if you care about the public misappropriation of funds, if you care about the issues facing our community, we want you to get down to City Hall on the 19th. That is Monday, February 19th. We plan to meet on the steps of City Hall at 6 p.m., where we will be shouting from the rooftops about this issue. And together we will impress upon the commission through public statement, through public comment at the city commission meeting itself at 7, that this is not what this city wants, and that we demand an opportunity to have a conversation and determine as a community what these funds should be used for. And if you want more information about that, you can find out on our Facebook page as well. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to share. Kay, am I forgetting anything with that regard?
Yeah, we have a rally. The art, are we still down? The art build on February 15th at 4.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing an art build on the 15th, which if you reach out to me on Facebook, I'm happy to provide those details as well. If folks are not aware, this is what I remembered. If folks aren't aware, the annual City Commission budget retreat is going to be happening 6 days from now, so next Saturday on the 17th, all day long at the Foundry downtown. There will be an opportunity for public comment, and we, the people in our group, will be there, likely making comment and trying to have an opportunity to speak with our electeds about this issue in particular. So if you'd like to join us there, I encourage you as well.
All right, wonderful. And I just kind of want to close out this interview by saying, I want people, especially, if you're hearing about this for the first time, or it's something about, I do want to point out that if you look at the history, more recent history of Kalamazoo organizing, uh, you'll notice there is a pattern that when the city is trying to do something that messes with public space. There is, it is, there have been a lot of successful examples, people organizing around it. There was an individual on that phone chat we were on yesterday talking about very similar situation some decades ago with Hayes Park being potentially sold off to some manufacturing. I can think to the ongoing saga of the event center, which for about a decade and a half, the people interested in building it kept coming up with various different schemes and ideas for the public to pay for that, and it was squarely rejected. Now, the event center is being built, but it is being built with private funds. I just want to kind of close out by saying, this is a struggle or fight that has had been successful in the past. And I think if there's enough people who rally around this issue this upcoming week, we could see another such, I don't know if the word is victory win. There's at least the kind of city recognizing what the residents want. Thank you both so much for coming on our program. Any parting thoughts before we close out?
I just want to say thank you so much, Andy. Thank you, Media Cyphers. We are doing everything we can to get the word out. I want to reiterate, if anyone wants to get involved with this event, please reach out to us on Facebook. Or if you are someone who is impacted by high rent or issues with involving the housing crisis, we want to speak with you about that as well, because this is only one fight in what is a larger struggle, right, for justice and housing for everyone in our city. So please, if you want to be a part of things, we want you to be a part of things as well. So thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate you, and thank you, Kay, also for sharing. You're an invaluable part of our organizing, and just
Thank you. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to talk about this and spread the word, because the fight for Arcadia has been long and violent, and I feel like we really need to have these conversations finally in the city. So thank you so much for opening the space to have this conversation.
Well, thank you both, and also thank you to the listener. And if you are moved by what you heard today, we feel free to share this video/podcast out far and wide to inform other Kalamazoo residents about that. Thank you both again for coming on the show, and everybody listening. Until next time, keep on fighting for that revolution solution.